Good afternoon. As always, I'll start with a quick assessment of our last performance. I think much like I said after the game, it's still an awkward feeling in evaluation of the performance. Obviously, yesterday we went through our normal procedures in terms of analyzing the game in an effort to get better. We did that. We talked about some things we did well. Obviously, we talked about some things that we didn't do well, things we need to change. We analyzed logistically our approach to game planning and prep and how it played out, things that you do after the first performance. But the result of the game still kind of leaves that feeling. It does. But we'll quickly transition as we get ready to move on to this next one. I think when I look back at the performance, much like I said after the game, I'm appreciative of a lot of the efforts. There were things in the game that were good. There were certain things in the game that were extraordinarily good under circumstances. And much like we do this time of year, it's important that you build upon those things and work to minimize the negativity. I thought the significant negativity in the game was the turnover ratio. And I think that is the lesson learned moving forward. First of all, we're very fortunate to be in the game, turning the ball over 6 times and only getting 1. So we're very fortunate to be in the game. We got to do a better job of taking care of the ball. We got to do a better job equally of getting the ball. If you factor in weather as a legitimate factor, whether you choose to or not, if it affected us negatively offensively, it should have also affected the Cleveland Browns negatively. That's why I talk about not us turning the ball over 6 times, but us not turning the ball over 6 times and not getting turnovers. The ratio or the margin, -5, is what made it significant. Had we got more turnovers, maybe the game would have turned out differently. So the challenges are for us collectively. We got to look at why we didn't produce more turnovers, given we played 90-plus snaps through almost 5 quarters of football. And obviously we got to look at doing a good job of taking care of the ball better on offense based on that performance. But all in all, some things that were positive. The run game development offensively, young guys that have gotten a lot of attention, like James Conner. I thought he performed well largely. Some new components on defense, the back end, the growth and development. I thought that the guys were close and competitive from a coverage standpoint. I thought that pass breakups, or the pass breakup totals, were reflective of that. I think we had to do a better job finishing to get more turnovers. We touched some balls. We only caught 1. I think that'll define groups as you move forward. I like some of the things that I saw in the kicking game. I thought we did a good job of getting Ryan Switzer infused into our football team in the kicking game, but also in a few spaces offensively. I thought that was encouraging. I like our overall exposure in the first regular season action to the new kickoff structure. We had several instances where we pinned them down inside the 15 with our coverage unit. We always got out beyond the 25 with our return unit. And I think you can underscore that as we all get comfortable with the new structure of the kickoff and kickoff return element of play. Like what we did there. So, lessons learned in all 3 phases, some good, some things we need to do better. We'll learn and move forward. Now we turn our attentions, like we always do, to the next challenge, and that's Kansas City. Before I get to it, I'll talk on some injuries. Jordan Hayden didn't finish the game with a hamstring injury. We're evaluating that and his availability for practice, and we're going to let that availability be our guide in terms of the game. We'll see if he's available in some capacity tomorrow, and let's see if that availability grows as we push throughout the week. David DeCastro has a hand fracture that's being looked at and dealt with. It happened in game. He was able to finish the game. It may affect him from a participation standpoint in practice, at least as we get started here in this week. And we had some other bumps and bruises along the way. Tyson Alualu in the shoulder. Ben's elbow may limit him at the early portions of the week. Like we've done with him in the past, we oftentimes limit him at the early portions of the week anyway. It aids in the growth and development of the young passers, et cetera. His cumulative body of work over his extended career helps in that charge, as we always do. As you look at Kansas City, we've been very familiar with these guys. They've been very familiar with us. We've played them a lot in recent years, but the things to be on guard about and not seek comfort in that familiarity. And it's new. It's a new season. There are new critical components from a player standpoint. There are new critical components from a coaching standpoint. We've got a new offensive coordinator. I'm sure they're trying to figure out how that weighs in their preparation. They got a new offensive coordinator in Eric Bieniemy. I'm sure that's weighing into our equation in terms of how we prepare. New significant components from a player standpoint. Mahomes is their quarterback, although he's not new there to them this year. He is a new signal caller. Alex Smith has been a central component of the matchup in recent years. Derek Johnson, their defensive signal caller for over a decade, is not there anymore. So there's certain things, even though we've played these guys a lot, that make it somewhat different, along with it being a new year and the growth and development and change that naturally comes with new seasons. I got a lot of respect for Coach Reed and company. I've competed against those guys over the years. You know they're capable of attacking you in multiple ways with people on offense. The utilization of people is big. We got to work to minimize Kelsey's impact on the game. They got a dynamic tight end. He's been a big component of the matchup for years. He didn't get a lot of touches last week. I don't think that's reflective of his role within this year's group. As a matter of fact, I'd imagine it's probably going to intensify our exposure to him this week. We got to work to minimize that. Tariq Hill is a unique talent. He just is. Had an opportunity to spend a week around him when we were down in Orlando at the Pro Bowl. He's an awesome guy, dynamic player. We've known about his kick return capabilities, his game-changing kick return capabilities for several years. I think, when you look at last week, week one, you just see continued growth as a wide receiver and the way that they utilize him in the offense. He started off early in his career strictly as a kick returner and gadget guy. He got infused and became a core offensive weapon. I think last week shows that he is their chief receiving threat. His ability to blow the game open, take a short pass and turn it into a long gain is something to be contested. He's a talented guy. Mahomes, he's a sharp guy. Interviewed him through the draft process when he came out. He's got really unique arm talent. He can make any throw on the field. He can release it from a variety of positions. He can throw stationary. He can throw on the move. He's got an awesome repertoire of physical talent. He's a sharp kid. He just is. He's mature beyond his years, and conversing with him, I think it's reflected in the amount of things that they were able to do last week in week one. The changes of personnel, the obscure things, the design quarterback runs, the gadget plays. He managed it all very well, and managed it in a road game environment. Can't underscore the Heinz Field element of this matchup, man. I'm excited about being in Heinz Field and having Steeler Nation support us. He was in a road game environment last week, but that was a unique road environment with the stadium situation in LA, man. It's going to be awesome to have 65,000, 70,000 supporters in a home environment this week. I think it could be significant in terms of trying to slow down their pace and some of the things that they do offensively. Defensively, under Coach Sutton, man, they've been together for a number of years. They got some core guys, some guys that we've had matchups with in the past and are still major components. I spoke earlier about Derek Johnson not being there and him being a defensive signal caller for a number of years and the change that's associated with that. But they do have some guys that have been there. And the defensive line, Chris Jones is a talented young player, been a key component for him for a number of years, talented interior rushman. They went out and acquired Xavier Williams in restricted free agency. He's an anchor point. They probably were without that signature anchor point since they lost Poe a couple years ago in free agency. They went in and addressed that. Williams is a load inside. At the outside linebacker position, they got two very well-known weapons in Houston and D Ford. And they move those guys around. Everybody's got to be prepared to block them. They rush on both sides. They flop. Both of them are capable of rushing inside. I think D Ford got the first sack of the game last week and an interior rush on a guard. They're talented people. They have been. We got to work to minimize their impact on the game. Talented rushmen dictate a lot that goes on in the passing game. At the linebacker level, they got some good guys that they've been developing, Ragland and others. I mentioned Derek Johnson not being there, but they've developed young talent. They drafted a talented young speed guy out of Clemson that's a capable coverage man and sub-package linebacker. I've been watching him on tape. They got experienced guys in the secondary. They went and got Scandridge. Scandridge played a lot of ball, sub-package, nickels, and so forth. They got a lot of capable coverage people. They mix a lot of things up. Last week, the mix of zones and zone pressures and bogus pressures, particularly on possession downs, is challenging, and we got to work to meet those challenges. Obviously, in the special teams game, they're explosive. It starts with Hill. We got to work to minimize his impact on the game. We always work to do that. But collectively, whether it's he or Thomas or others, man, they have an awesome special teams unit. And it goes beyond just Tariq, to be honest with you. Their coverage units are rock solid. They got a core group that includes guys like Sherman, the fullback, is a core special teams player, solid player for him, much like Rosie Nix is for us. It's going to be a challenging, exciting game. We're excited about preparing for it. We're excited about getting back to work with our guys tomorrow in search of our first victory, and particularly our first victory at Heinz Field. Be happy to address any questions you might have.
Coach, switching TJ and Bud, obviously TJ had the great game. How did Bud do at his new outside position?
I thought Bud had a similar performance in that he was productive. The switch revealed itself in his skill set. We'll continue to work. We're going to ask those guys to be versatile and to move around. You nail those guys down as young people so they can get muscle memory associated with skill development at their positions. But as they get older, we'll continually move them around. It provides flexibility for us. It's more that our opponents have to work on. And that's very similar to what Kansas City does with Houston and D Ford. So it's not earth-shattering, but in terms of that tandem, it is new for us because we're acknowledging that they're becoming veteran players and we are more willing to ask them to do new and different things.
Mike, you mentioned good and extraordinary good performances. Who fell into the latter category of extraordinary?
You know, I thought TJ, was one of it. One of the really good performances. I thought our coverage units, Tyler Matakovich in particular, was really good. Just to name a couple, that's nothing unique. I think anytime you play, you have things that are good, bad, really good, or in some instances really bad, like those performances and some others.
Mike, how much do you attribute Watt's success to the switch to the other side? Is that a more natural position for him?
I think time will tell. I'm not going to try to paint with a broad brush after one performance, but I will say that I'm not surprised that he had an impactful game. It was schematically set up for him to impact the game, and he did.
Mike, Ben, is this something new with his elbow, or is this similar to in past years?
Just the bumps and bruises associated with play. That was the post-game, if you will. We'll see how he is tomorrow morning and let that be our guide. It's just full disclosure from my part, just because I know that you guys will ask.
Mike, Sean Davis was your only defensive player to play every snap. He's doing so in a new position. What do you think of his play back there?
I thought he had some really good moments. I liked the breakup down the middle of the field early, the clean breakup where it was a defenseless receiver type play, and he did a good job of not hitting the guy in the head and neck area and not utilizing his head. Things like that. He's new to the middle of the field as much as he's in the middle of the field. So to see him make a play like that and do so cleanly is encouraging. He tracked the ball and had an interception that was negated by penalty. He broke up another big play on a play action on a 3rd down and 1 down the field. So I thought I saw some really good middle of the field things. It was a good start, but again, you can't paint with a broad brush. We've been in one stadium. We're working. We'll learn more about ourselves individually and collectively as we continue to step into more stadiums.
Mike, speaking the defenseless receiver, avoiding the defenseless receiver, the tendencies are there. That call was not very prominent in the first week of the NFL. The lowering the helmet was not very prominent, but the body weight on the quarterback was. Like, you and a lot of the other coaches took ownership for trying to teach the players to avoid the helmet thing. How do you avoid the body weight on that quarterback?
In a very similar way. The approach is no different. None of us coach full body weight on the quarterback. None of us coach lowering the crown of our head to deliver a blow. So it's just identifying it as a point of emphasis, an element of play that we want minimized or removed from the game, and the professionals do the rest. We've worked extremely hard to put Sean Davis in the frame of mind that he makes the type of play that he made. But Sean Davis made the play. I didn't make the play. So we'll continue to make the points of emphasis. The guys have done a good job of making those points of emphasis reality in terms of how we play. We got to continue to work and improve in those areas. You know, we had a roughing, I think, on TJ against Tyrod at the early portions of the game. We're just going to work our tail off to play within the rules, because if you don't, it doesn't help your cause in terms of winning football games. Hadn't spent a lot of time looking at global issues relative to what happened in other stadiums. We were really concerned about what's going on in ours at this juncture.
Mike, what's the biggest challenge with Tyreek Hill's speed matched with how they use him all over the field?
It's just, speed kills. They get him in space. They're capable of moving him around on offense. I think the longer he's there, the more ingrained he is in the offense, the more it becomes problematic down in and down out. He's just a talented player, one that has to be minimized, because every time the ball snaps, he's capable of running through your end zone. I just saw a stat this morning. He's got more plus 50-yard touchdowns, I think, than anybody in football since he's been in the league. That doesn't surprise me. I think it's 13 or so. That's reflective of not only his speed, but his talents. And I think vision is an element of that, man. He's a great open grass football player.
By getting the ball from the quarterback in the pocket, forcing fumbles, is that more defensive technique or QB ball security?
It's both. It always is. Any element of ball security is twofold. Whether you're talking on the defensive side in terms of your opportunities to get it and how you seek it, or whether you're talking about the securing of it on offense. It always is.
Did Vance McDonald suffer a setback late last week?
No.
Mike, when you look at penalties, do you factor in much with the weather and whether they may have prevented a turnover or things like that, or do you just look at them straight as that was a negative play against you?
Penalties or turnovers? Which one are you talking about?
Look at them as something that weather could have affected it, or
Penalties?
it may have been preventing a turnover by taking a penalty.
Penalties? I just look at penalties relative to our opponent. That's the one thing that's constant, the in-stadium element of it. Sometimes games are, highly officiated and there's a lot of penalties. Sometimes they're not. I always look at penalties relative to the people that we compete against. I think that's the true barometer.
Mike, it seemed like James Washington didn't get a ton of snaps. What does he have to do to get on the field?
He just got to keep working. He's a young guy. He's made some plays in preseason football. He's made some plays in a training camp-like setting. He played some on Sunday. That will continue. It's just a natural maturation process or development that all players go through. What happened for him Sunday is no reflection of the trajectory of his career, whether it was positive or negative. I think it's important that young guys just wipe the slate clean, man, and clock in and come to work each and every day and don't overanalyze the here and the now. Because the reality is, in the big scheme of things, he's been here a very short period of time. I know it seems like he's been here a long time for him. He just needs to keep coming to work, as does all the others.
Did his ab injury limit his work at all in practice last week?
No, not last week.
Coach, were you pleasantly surprised with Ryan Switzer's performance, or were you expecting that when you brought him in?
That's what we expected.
But is there any reason to suspect that Ben's elbow problem affected ball security or his ability to throw the ball?
No.
Well, you guys have been very good running against Kansas City in recent years. You mentioned were they different, were they the same. What about, why have you been good exploiting that part of the matchup, independent of Lev, of course, but can James replicate that?
I don't know that has been the case. I probably don't describe it in that way. We respect those guys, man. They're a tough group to operate against. We probably had a couple good running days, but we've had a couple good running days anyway. We're committed to running the ball each and every Sunday. I'm sure that they're going to work their tails off to minimize that element of play for us, and it's just the element of the matchup. I think it's always going to be that when we step into stadiums. I think that's always our intention, to have offensive balance, to be capable of running it when we choose, with whom we choose, and whatever personnel groups or situations we choose.
I imagine it's pretty tough to gauge what they do against the run because they got out to such a big lead in the first game against the Chargers.
They're going to do what they do. I don't know that it changed much. It maybe changed how San Diego attacked them, but San Diego throws the ball a bunch anyway, man. They got Phillip Rivers at quarterback, so I don't know what you would have gleaned from that regardless of the flow of the game.
With all the due diligence you all did with quarterbacks the last couple of years, how deep did your file go on Mahomes?
Significant, but it's just an exercise in information gathering and a learning process for us. That's why I was able to talk at length about the things that I saw from him and the things that I appreciated about him and from a talent standpoint in the draft prep process.
I figured you would go too high for where you guys were picking.
I'm not getting into all of that. I respect the guys and his talents. I can't even remember where he was taken.
Was there any thought of using Stephen Ridley, or is Connor performing well enough that you just want to stay with him?
We have no reservations about using any of our guys that are suited for the game and are willing and capable. James Conner was doing well, was in great physical condition, like we mentioned in here several times. We infused Ryan Switzer in some by concept. That's just really kind of how the game unfolded.
Mike, how do you address Antonio Brown threatening to report his jaw on Twitter?
Guys, don't ask me about social media things. We could talk all day about things that are online or on the internet or in social media. I just choose to stay away from it because it's a waste of my time. There's very little accountability. There's very little journalistic integrity, et cetera. Guys say things they don't mean. I talk to my teenagers about it all the time. Let's keep it professional and in the real. I think that's appropriate in this setting.
Mike, did you ever get an explanation why pretty much everybody thought or saw the ball hit off the Browns player, off Chubb, that you guys would have recovered off that punt, and except for the replay officials and the guys?
I'm not asking for explanations. The way that I look at it is it's an opportunity for us to grow, because sometimes things happen in football that are outside your control, and sometimes you feel like you've been wronged. All of us saw the ball hit that guy. Their returner, Peppers, saw the ball hit that guy, because why else would a returner insert himself into that scrum trying to recover the ball unless he was sure the ball hit the guy? So that's the approach that we're taking as we move forward. Once a decision is made, there's nothing else that you can do about it, man. You got to move on. You'll miss the next opportunity to win the game in some way if you spend time crying over spilt milk. We had other opportunities to secure that game after that. So that's where our focus is in terms of using that as a teachable moment. Why that play was not corrected, I have no idea. Ask New York. They felt comfortable talking about the hit on Ben was inappropriately officiated. I'd be interested to see their comments regarding that play. I haven't taken time to ask because I'm busy preparing for Kansas City.
Mike, have you had any recent correspondence with Le'Veon?
I have not, no.
Have you received any clarity on when he might come?
No, I have not. And from that perspective, nothing has changed regarding us. We're preparing to play this week with the guys that are here and working, James being central to that. I will not withhold information from you guys. If and when any of that changes, I'll let you know. If it does not, my answer will remain the same.
With James having such a heavy workload for the first time in a couple of years in a game, will he have to be watched a little bit this week?
Man, I watched that guy tote that ball a lot next door. I think he's been doing that for a long time. I think he's used to that. I think he gets better with use. I think that was one of the things that was attractive about him. I know, what was that, his sophomore year, I think, when he scored all those touchdowns. I mean, he likes to carry the football. He warms up to it.
How much do you assess, or how much does it affect your assessment of his performance given what he did when he has a fumble? How much does that detract from it, if at all?
I'm not over-analyzing that play. It's a play you'd like to have back. It's a play he'd like to have back. It's a play from a blocking standpoint we'd like to have back. They had a guy in the damn backfield chasing him. So it's just football. We're not going to over-analyze it. We're definitely not going to, have an overreaction. We don't wait for things to happen to preach ball security. Since day 0 of our offseason, I'll walk past the running backs and stretch, and I say, take care of the football. The rest is just learning. It's going to be a good day if we do those things. I say that every day. I've probably said that to him every day he's been here. So I'm not going to change now.
When you do say Ben's elbow is a bumps and bruises situation associated with football, does that indicate that he should be good for Sunday's game?
Guys, I outlined it. It may limit his participation at the early portions of the week, and we'll let that be our guide as we move forward.
Anyone else? Mike, there was another review on the fumble along the sideline, Brown's fumble that hit the pylon. Should that have been, did you get a good?
Hey, refer all those questions to New York. I'm not going to do their jobs for them.
Anything else? All right.
Thank you, guys.